Here are 5 very important skills that every new paramotor pilot needs to understand, why they're important, and exactly how you improve these skills. Hey there, my name is Trevor Steele, and over the last 12 years, I've trained over 566 students how to fly paramotors, and today I want to teach you a few of the things I've learned in that process. Number 1 is altitude control. Number 2, oscillation control. Number 3, glider control. Number 4, the ability to say no. And number 5, checking weather. The first thing you need to be good at is altitude control. Being able to control your altitude, give or take, only a couple of feet is a critical skill for progressing in paramotoring. There are a handful of things that you'll want to do just for fun and for safety reasons that being able to maintain altitude within a very small margin is going to be important. One of those things that you will progress towards is what we call motor on landings. If you've got a tighter LZ and you need to maintain a certain altitude, then quickly drop into, say, a tighter landing zone, you need to be able to maintain that altitude. The other thing is, if you're looking to fly within proximity of the terrain, which most paramotor pilots like to, you need to be able to control that altitude. There are a handful of things that you need to practice with this. So here's how you get good at it. The first thing you want to do is practice with just the throttle. Go up 50 to 100 feet where you still have a little perspective of the ground and practice just controlling altitude with the throttle. A couple things you're going to learn in that process is that throttle is what I like to refer to as macro adjustments. When you give throttle, you receive big inputs. The other thing with throttle is it's very delayed. It is not an instant reaction. There is a 2 to 2 seconds between the time where you apply the throttle to the time that you receive the input of altitude change. Once you've done just some throttle control practice, add brakes. Start to play with the difference of pulling some brakes for a moment, releasing brakes for a moment, and seeing that brakes are in some way a micro adjustment. You receive a change in altitude, give or take, up or down for only a moment, but you do receive it much quicker. There is no delay to the brake input. It is far faster. Then add the two together. Once you've started to play with those two things together and you've started to understand how to control altitude, bring yourself lower and lower to the ground. I would highly recommend you go no lower than 15 feet when you're new, because there is a danger zone between 5 and 15 feet if you have an engine out. The next thing that you want to start getting good at with your altitude control is turning. Start with gradual turns and realize that as you initiate a turn, you start to lose altitude and increase in speed as that glider is diving towards the direction you're turning. Then start to add throttle in the turn to maintain altitude, and when you're exiting a turn, you're going to gain altitude, so start to release that throttle. Play with those inputs. Play with the gradual, gentle turns and work up to more aggressive turns where you're doing full 180s and even 360s while maintaining altitude. The next skill that is super important you get good at is oscillation control. For those of you that don't know what oscillation is the natural rocking back and forth of a paraglider. The reason we experience so much oscillation is due partly because of the pendulum effect as well as inertia. But as this glider rocks back and forth, it is up to the pilot to stop and control that oscillation. It is extremely important that you are good at controlling oscillation, as oscillation can be very dangerous in 2 ways. Number 1, on landing approach. If you're coming into land and you're about to flare for landing, but you're oscillating more than you realize, you will actually float up and come down sideways, which can be a very uncomfortable and unpleasant landing. Number 2 is if you're flying within proximity of the ground. If you're down in a canyon swaying back and forth out of control, you may find yourself bumping into the ground and not even know why you hit the ground or landed in that situation. It is very important you understand oscillation, where it is, where it occurs, and how you control it. Every paramotor pilot, every paraglider pilot experiences it the entire time they're flying. Only difference between them and you is that they know how to control it at all times. There are 2 main ways of stopping oscillation. Number 1 is turning. You go the direction the glider is swaying and you turn it into a gradual turn. Number 2 is by pulling the low side as the low side comes up. For example, if the glider dips to the pilot's right, as the glider is coming back up above the pilot's head, the pilot would gradually pull right brake and release it at the proper timing to make sure that that glider doesn't continue to go off to the left and or go off to the right, stopping it above their head. This input is something that pilots are doing at a regular basis during their flights. You just wouldn't notice. Some gliders are more prone to oscillating than other gliders. Some have winglets and other technology to stop and reduce oscillation, but it's very important that paramotor pilots know how to control oscillation. The next skill that is very important that paramotor pilots understand is glider control. Now, glider control is the art or skill of controlling the glider on the ground while you're hooked into it with the wing above your head. Contrary to popular belief or what you may see on the internet, the glider doesn't naturally want to stay directly above your head while you're on the ground. It wants to go left, right, forward, back, and in every direction in between, always moving around and dancing depending on the wind conditions, wind speed, and wind gusts, as well as pilot inputs. It is your job as the pilot to make sure that you can control that glider to a perfect T while you're standing on the ground, both reverse and forward. The reason it's so important that you're good at glider control is because the better you are at controlling that glider, more consistently controlling that glider, recovering from things, responding to things properly, the more consistently you'll be able to launch first try successfully, the more consistently you'll be able to land successfully, and overall, the better control you will have of that paraglider. The other thing that is extremely important with glider control is the better you are preventing and recovering from collapses on the ground during your glider control, the better you will be at preventing and recovering from collapses in the air. The fourth thing that a paramotor pilot needs to be very good at is being able to say no. If you're not feeling up to flying in that moment, if you don't feel like flying in those conditions, if for whatever reason somebody is peer pressuring you or something doesn't feel right, the pilot needs to be able to tell themselves no, and not only tell themselves no, but hold themselves accountable. This boils down to discipline. If you know the answer to doing something is no, you need to be able to hold yourself to it. More often than not, the reason and times paramotor pilots get in crashes, they knew the answer should have been no with doing X, Y, or Z. So having the ability to tell yourself no, hold yourself accountable to saying no, and not doing something you know not to do is a very valuable, very important skill set to keeping yourself safe and successful as a paramotor pilot. The fifth skill set that you need to be very good at as a paramotor pilot is understanding weather. We as a paramotor are very fair weather aircrafts, which essentially means that we are not able to handle ourselves in extreme weather conditions, and we need to be very knowledgeable of what is extreme weather, how do you predict it, how do you see it, how do you forecast it, and how do you avoid flying in those conditions. One of the things that we do at length during our 10-day beginner training class here at Backcountry PPG is discuss weather. Not only do we discuss the theory of weather, what we're looking for, real-world examples, but we created a checklist to walk you through checking weather to ensure you do not skip steps, do not miss things, or do not neglect certain things. I have found through my flying career of over 12 years that it is the times where you forget to check one of the things that something creeps up on you that you weren't paying attention to. Having had a lot of pilots come through our training program, writing down a checklist for checking weather and checking it every single time you go flying is a skill, a thing you absolutely need to have. If you would like access to our weather checklist, we are in the process of creating an actual document that walks you through every single thing that we do checking the weather. We are also creating a near 100-page weather ground school book, and we are in the process of creating a video outlining exactly how we check the weather. If you would like more information on any of these things, visit our website, backcountryppg.com, and subscribe to our YouTube channel, as our weather video is coming soon, and you don't want to miss that when it comes out. If you found this video useful and you wanted to get into paramotoring for yourself, we offer a 10-day training program out of Salton Sea, California in the winter and out of Salt Lake City in the summer. During these 10 days, we're going to teach you everything you need to know from A to Z about flying paramotors. If you want more information on our training program alone, visit our website, backcountryppg.com.